Thank you, Tim, and welcome and thank you to all the reporters covering this extraordinary gun policy summit, both here and on the internet. This has been a very important 2 days. The summit came together in the wake of the tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut 1 month ago. Given the drastically high rates of gun violence in the United States, starkly illustrated by numerous mass shootings in movie theaters, shopping malls, houses of worship, and now at an elementary school, but also experienced on a daily basis in neighborhoods across our country, we knew at Johns Hopkins that we could not let this moment pass. We wanted to do all that we could to bring together national and global experts, advocates, and leaders on gun violence and policy to present their research, analysis, and perspectives. Thanks to the efforts of Professor Daniel Webster and Professor Jan Vernick and their colleagues at the Center for Gun Policy and Research at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg School of Public Health, we were able to organize quickly and thoughtfully an international conference on reducing gun violence in America. With a call for action at the federal level, this summit is our effort to galvanize collective expertise to advance the discussion of gun violence in America through robust research and evidence. We also understood that a critical component of the summit would be to create a set of research-based policy recommendations that can inform, that can shape, that can support the policy debate. These will help lawmakers and opinion leaders identify the policy changes that are most likely to reduce gun violence in the United States. And you will hear these important recommendations in a moment. Finally, as we have indicated a number of times throughout the summit, we will be publishing a book on the summit that will be available to the public in just 2 weeks. That book will be published by Johns Hopkins Press and will capture the state-of-the-art research that was discussed over the last 2 days at the summit. Before turning over the podium to Daniel, I want to thank the scores of people, many of whom are in this room, who have made this summit possible and successful in a remarkably short period of time. It was truly a Herculean effort, and I'm most grateful for the time and energy that people put into this. This was not a scheduled conference. This was not something that had been planned months in advance, but was rather something that was pulled together on short notice over the last 3 weeks because we felt the imperative to contribute to this very important debate. I also want to take this opportunity to thank New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, and all of the presenters for their willingness to come together on short notice to take part in this important event. I'm now pleased to introduce members of our faculty who organized the conference and presented research. I want to first introduce Daniel Webster and Jan Vernick, who are co-editors of the book and have done so much to make this event possible. I'm also pleased that Dr. Colleen Berry, who is with the Department of Health Policy Management at the Bloomberg School, who also has some very important survey findings to share, will also be on the podium with me. Turn it over to Daniel Webster.
Thank you very much, President Daniels, and thank you for your extraordinary support and leadership through this process. My colleagues at the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research and at the Bloomberg School of Public Health are very grateful for your leadership and support. The last 2 days have been really an amazing experience for me to bring together the best scholars, the best expertise, to grapple with and come forward with a set of recommendations that would be based on the best available research and experience. I want to touch very briefly upon the expertise that we assembled. As President Daniels alluded to, we searched far and wide. We have individuals coming from several different countries to contribute to this effort. We have criminologists, public health leaders, legal experts, a really vast majority span of experience and expertise, and really many, many decades of working on this problem of gun violence and solutions to it. Following mass shootings, we tend to go through a very similar process. And prior to the most recent tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut, we kept hearing similar sort of refrain of things that I knew to be not the case. We would hear, nothing works, gun policies don't work. We would hear, there's no agreement, there's too much division on public opinion. We can't address this because of the Constitution. Well, we brought together the scholarship to really refute all of those efforts. And we think we have a set of recommendations that not only will be effective in reducing gun violence in America, but will also be constitutional and have very wide support among the public, including most gun owners. We've distributed our press release that has the very specific recommendations. I'm not going to go through every single one of those, but I'm going to sort of talk about the general areas that we feel the reforms are necessary and would bring about important change to save lives. There was very strong consensus that the most important thing we need to do is to fix our current system for background checks. It is really indefensible that we have a system that allows people to sell firearms with no background checks, no record keeping, and no accountability. We recommend that this be changed so that every single firearm transaction, except if someone is inheriting a firearm or a father-to-son kind of transaction, that be processed through a federally licensed firearm dealer with a background check and record-keeping process. We also identified a set of recommendations to address what is a well-established fact that a very small number of gun dealers contribute to a very large problem of fueling the illicit gun market. That's largely due to the fact of the set of current federal policies that really do not enable the ATF to hold firearm sellers accountable for following the basic rules to keep guns from dangerous people. We also have a set of recommendations in an area that I think is not adequately discussed when we have different policy discussions about guns, and that is taking a close look at who should be legally able to possess guns, or what we have found in evidence that we've examined is the current conditions for prohibiting firearm purchase are really grossly inadequate and allow a number of individuals who can be quite dangerous to purchase guns. And so we have a number of recommendations for example, prohibiting individuals who have been convicted of a violent misdemeanor from being able to purchase firearms, and other categories of individuals such as individuals who committed a serious violent crime processed through the juvenile court be prohibited from purchasing a firearm for an extended period of time. Excuse me. We also have some recommendations, general recommendations with respect to mental health and guns. First and foremost is that the federal restrictions on gun purchase for persons with serious mental illness should be focused on the dangerousness of the individual, and we think the current law is not focused adequately on danger and has a very broad category that doesn't really capture the individuals that are really of greatest concern. We also made recommendations on the topic of assault weapons to ban future sale of assault weapons, incorporating a more carefully craft a definition than our prior ban to reduce risk that the law can be easily evaded, as the prior ban was. We also recommended banning the future sale and possession of large capacity ammunition magazines, those being ammunition magazines that hold greater than 10 rounds of ammunition. Finally, and very importantly, we have recommendations relevant to research. We believe the federal government should provide funds to the Centers for Disease Control, National Institutes of Health, and National Institutes of Justice to understand both the causes and solutions of gun violence commensurate with its dramatic impact on public health and safety. We also recommend that the Surgeon General issue a regular report on the state of the problem of gun violence in America and progress towards solutions. Those are the general recommendations. We have more specific ones that are in our press release. I also, as I alluded to before, the measures that we are recommending, we did Dr. Berry led an investigation with Beth McGinty here and Jan Vernick and myself to look at current public opinion on the very specific kinds of policies, because many of the polls were asked too general of questions. So we have very specific information on that, and Dr. Berry will be available to answer questions relevant to public support for many of the things that we're recommending. So we can now open it up for questions, and again, I'll ask please to use a microphone and identify yourself. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
Hi there. I'm going to make a couple points related to what Daniel just said about the public opinion survey research that we've done here at Hopkins just over the last 2 weeks. As Daniel mentioned, we, as in the weeks following the tragedy at Sandy Hook, we noticed that much of the public opinion research that was done was focusing on general attitudes among the public, and we were interested in looking at a broad range of specific policies and understanding support among the general public, among Americans, and then among specific subgroups, in particular differences by gun ownership and differences by political party identification. And so we conducted just over the last 2 weeks public opinion survey, including 2,400 respondents on 31 different public policies to try to understand support. And in brief, we found that the majority of Americans supported most of the 33 policies that we asked about, including the ban on the sale of assault weapons, the ban on the sale of large capacity ammunition magazines, a range of measures related to prohibiting persons from having guns, a range of measures related to strengthening the background check system, a range of measures to improve oversight of gun dealers. Support for many of these policies was high, regardless of political party identification. And for many of these policies, the differences between gun owners and non-gun owners were smaller than might have been anticipated. We hope that these research findings will provide specific guidance to policymakers in the context of understanding American support for a range of specific policies that are available for addressing the problem of gun violence. And the takeaway message from this research is there is a broad set of policies that policymakers can choose from that are supported by the American public. Thank you.
So, so now if there are questions that anyone has?
The question is just obvious at this point is what's next? You've made the recommendations. You're going to try to, get this in the hands of policymakers? Is this going to Congress or Mr. Biden's committee right now?
Sure. Thank you for your question. Yes, our intention and that we will follow through on is that the book that we are writing will be delivered directly to members of Congress and members of the administration, and we've already been in communication with many of those individuals.
Can you expand upon your assault weapon proposed ban? Won't that, as they always say, just put more guns in the arms of criminals and do little to keep people safe? Or what's your theory behind it?
Our theory behind the need for assault weapon ban is that these are weapons that are designed for military purposes. We believe that they pose a unique threat, particularly with respect to mass shootings, and there's data to support that the casualty numbers tend to be larger with such weapons, and we believe that citizens have plenty of options available to them to purchase other types of firearms for self-protection or sporting use. Next question.
In regard to assault weapons as well, is part of the recommendations perhaps maybe a buyback system to maybe try make the federal government or something would maybe buy these guns from owners, because it would be very hard to take guns away from people that already own them.
No, you're absolutely right. So our group definitely discussed that very difficult question that you raised. We decided that it would be more feasible to ban the future sale of such weapons. However, with respect to the large capacity magazines, that we would recommend both ban purchase and possession of those. And yes, that would involve some type of buyback system. Yes.
Yeah, could you just talk a little bit more about the universal background check portion of it, specifically the inheritance exception and exactly how that would all work?
Sure. I think it's really quite simple, actually. There's a system currently set up under federal law. If you're going to purchase a firearm from a federally licensed firearm dealer, you have to complete a particular form to indicate that you don't fall into any one of the prohibiting categories. You have to submit to and pass a background check. We believe that the general idea behind that has almost universal support. The general notion that you should not be able to purchase a firearm before you have some validation that you haven't fallen into one of these prohibiting categories. So if you are a private firearm owner who wants to sell a gun, you would do that through a licensed dealer who would presumably be able to charge a fee for that service. Does that answer that question? Other questions? Okay. Thank you.